everyone, it's Sevy. The Calamity Queller is the new addition to the Polearm Impact collection, and I've been curious to see how it fares with the plethora of options we have. Trying to compare the Calamity Queller to other polearms is a challenge due to the permutations available on polearms and polearm users. So to make the video concise, I chose what I thought are the most relevant combos to compare it with. Let me make it clear what and who we're testing here, just so you already know what to expect. First is Xiangling on an R5 The Catch versus R1 Calamity Queller. Despite it being a free-to-play weapon, the Catch gives insanely high damage value for her, even outclassing other 5 stars and being almost at par with Engulfing Lightning, Homa, and Wavebreaker's Fin on meta Xiangling teams. So how does the new 5-star challenger fare against it? Then for Xiao, it's the Queller versus Jade Spear and Homa, both of which are his best in slots. The Queller and Jade Spear are on the current 2.4 weapon banner, and maybe some of you have or are tempted to pull, so you might be curious what you're getting with either. I'll also tack on a quick note at the end about Calamity Queller on other polearm users. But even if what you're looking for isn't here, I hope you stick around anyway to see the results. Let's get into it. Some points about the Calamity Queller's attributes first. It has the highest base attack tied with the Song of Broken Pines, which means attack percent substats get much more value. Then it adds 12% elemental damage bonus for all elements, and it has a passive stacking mechanic that requires you to use your skill to build up. This persists even if the character is switched out and even doubles, clearly made for Shenhe. It's a bit less friendly for snapshotting characters since, as I've tried, they can't retain the double bonus to snapshot the attack stat when you switch them into the field. Even doing the burst shortcut will still make the double bonus disappear. Now with the testing. Let's start with a Polearm Archon Xiangling, and let me give you the TLDR of the results. All things considered, the Catch is better, proving its brokenness once again. Let me show you how I got to that conclusion. For my Xiangling, she has a 4-piece emblem set with a crit circlet, pyro damage goblet, and attack sands, which I'll switch later to an ER sands on the Queller. Here are her stats. Since she's on the Catch, I can't get away with lower crit rate since her burst effectively gets a plus 12% crit rate increase. Going back to the sands, I'm moving between these two. The attack percent sands for the Catch and the ER sands for the Queller to balance out the stat changes. As you can see, the substats are very comparable with minor differences, so we can just work with this and no need to compensate with food. I'll be testing Xiangling with Bennett only first, and then with Kazuha added later on to see the results with different buffers and a full team potential. The team will also have Pyro Resonance enabled. Due to Xiangling's snapshotting mechanic, the Calamity Queller has a bit of a trick to it. To snapshot the highest attack bonus, I need to first put out Guoba to proc the skill, wait for at least 6 seconds for the attack stacks to fill while doing team setups, then pick up the drop chili for more attack, then use her burst. Guoba's C1 Pyro Shred debuff also needs to be present throughout all comparisons. So what do we get? Let's do it side by side. First is the Catch versus Calamity Queller with Bennett's buff only. Next, we'll add Kazuha into the mix. As you can see, Calamity Queller seems to be outputting higher damage than the Catch, but the difference isn't that huge. Now, if we consider that the Catch gives an additional 12% burst crit rate on R5, does that edge it out? Exchanging in 24% crit damage to Xiangling's The Catch build, it overtakes the Calamity Queller by a bit. Or you can keep the crit rate increase and enjoy more crit hits over time. So overall, as a fish-to-play 4-star weapon, the Catch is still top value, delivering damage output, quality of life, and consistency without having to spend anything. The Calamity Queller has disappointed the Polearm Archon. Now what about Xiao? First, here's my build on him. Let's compare the Queller to the Jade Spear, his best in slot signature polearm, and one you will win or lose to on the 2.4 weapon banner. They actually have an almost identical passive buff, the differences being that while Queller only has a 6 stack max, the Jade Spear has 7, plus the mechanics of getting that buff are different. I have to do enough hits with Xiao to get the full buff on Jade Spear, while I have to use his skill on the Calamity Queller. As for the attack stat, the Calamity Queller wins by quite a good amount. But the advantage of the Jade Spear is the crit rate it gives. On Calamity Queller, it's down to an acceptable 60% crit rate. I'll show you an equalized result through compensated crit stats afterwards, and of course consider the crucial loss of crit rate overall. So do excuse this Jade Spear for being R2. We'll just have to mentally bring its damage output down a little bit. Since Xiao's passive talent keeps increasing his damage bonus, I'll take the second and third stacks of its buff as the point of comparison. With those in mind, here are the results with Xiao against the Cryo Regisvine. First, the Calamity Queller. In its case, just remember to use the skill first before the burst, which will last for 20 seconds unless refreshed with another skill. In practical use, you should use his skill right before his burst to cover his entire burst duration. Then with the Spear, I'll gain max stacks first before using his burst. Finally, with the Staff of Homa, both above and below half HP. What if we're using Bennett to buff Xiao? Let's see. With Bennett, Homa manages to overtake Queller this time, but let's focus on the non-Bennett damage more. Looking at the numbers alone, they seem to be relatively close. While it looks like Jade Spear is the weakest among them, we have yet to account for the crit difference. That extra crit rate means that Xiao crits more consistently, which can be more favorable. And if we compensate the crit damage by exchanging that 22% crit rate for 44% crit damage, we see that Jade Spear competes much closer with Homa full passive on and still edges out Calamity Queller. So the Calamity Queller is up there. The attack stat you get looks nice to flex, but you will need more godly crit stat balancing to use it well. Still, if you happen to get it instead of the Jade Spear for Xiao, then take it as a W either way. And finally, some quick thoughts on other top candidates. For Shenhe, there's no doubt that it's the best in slot for her support utility. From my calculations, everything else gets beaten by the Queller thanks to its insanely high base attack and buff, coupled with Shenhe's attack percent focused build. Looking at our Polearm Impact characters, you might consider the Calamity Queller for Raiden and Rosaria. Testing the Queller on Raiden will have to account for a ton of extra factors that I can't get into now, but I think that the catch is still overall a better weapon for a support Raiden. Rosaria, on the other hand, will mostly be able to use Queller as a stat stick either for a cryo sub DPS or physical DPS, though she can't snapshot the double buff mechanic. Unfortunately, I don't have a Dragon Spine Spear level to compare it with right now. And that's going to be it for this comparison video, everyone. The polearm isn't particularly game-changing, mostly serving as a glorified stat stick. It might quell your appetite if you wanted your first 5-star, but it's not exactly a must-have, and it doesn't introduce a ton of value outside of Shenhe, so don't feel too bad for skipping it. What about you? Did you pull for the weapon, and who are you using it on? Tell me down in the comments. If you enjoyed this comparison video, don't forget to leave a like, consider subscribing to my channel if you haven't already for more Genshin Impact content, and I will see you soon. Take care!